Hello, everyone. I'm David Vaucher. Welcome to Return on Racing. Return on Racing is brought to you by Vaucher Analytics, which helps racing teams and drivers drive efficiencies off track so they can fuel success on track. Return on Racing is also brought to you by the Motorsport Sponsorship Accelerator, the most cutting edge resource out there to help you learn how to find, grow, and maintain long term sponsorship relationships. Well, the F1 movie has just released. I think that's going to be a really big hit. It's definitely on my list of things to do is to go see that. And my hypothesis, which I'll write more about, is this is going to funnel more people into the F1 ecosystem, Drive to Survive included. Now, the F1 community and perhaps the motorsports community in general has a bit of a love hate relationship with Drive to Survive, but no matter what your feelings, I don't think there's any denying just how instrumental that has been in growing the presence of F1, not just globally, but really in the United States. I think that's really where a lot of the growth has been coming from. And because of that success, you hear a lot that such and such series needs its own Drive to Survive. And that had me asking myself, is it really that simple? Well, I'm not going to bury the lead. I'll just tell you right up front, it is not. And in this three-part series of Return on Racing, I want to ask the question, is your favorite motorsports series ready for the global spotlight? Let's get started. When people think of racing, they think of Formula One, and increasingly, even casual viewers know the teams, the drivers, the rivalries. That didn't happen by accident. It happened because of Drive to Survive, a Netflix series that didn't just document Formula One, it transformed it from a niche European sport into a worldwide luxury media property. Since then, every struggling series has echoed the same line. We need our own Drive to Survive. But here's the truth. A docuseries won't elevate or even save you if your series isn't ready to be elevated or saved. And most aren't. Of course, the act itself of producing engaging content is not a given. But in my mind, it's more straightforward than being ready for the spotlight. In other words, the real difficulty is having the structure in place to capitalize on that eventual good content. This three-part series of Return on Racing breaks down exactly what that readiness looks like. So in part one, this is today's episode, I'm calling it the Scorecard. This is a framework to evaluate which motorsport series are ready or is ready for a Drive to Survive style leap. Part two will then be the trade-off, where I'll talk about why growing your audience means disappointing your purists. And I think many people who have been watching F1 for a long time will know all about this, but it is worth delving into. And then finally, part three will be the case study, a deep dive into the most viable candidate outside of F1 for a Drive to Survive style series and what it would take to cross the threshold from where it is today, which is not ready, to, logically enough, to being ready. So if you're an exec, sponsor, rights holder, or you just really love Drive to Survive, this is the blueprint and the episode series for you. So let's first talk about Formula One's foundation for Drive to Survive. If you want the full play-by-play of F1's transformation from an insular European championship to a global entertainment juggernaut, read The Formula by Joshua Robinson and Jonathan Clegg. I finished it not too long ago. It's a very easy read, a lot of fun, very fascinating as well. Please do check that out if you want the entire behind-the-scenes story and history. But for the purposes of this analysis, here's what you need to know as far as key dates. So in late 2016, Liberty Media acquired Formula One from CVC Capital Partners. In early 2018, F1 announced Drive to Survive. In early 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic locked down the world. 2022, Miami joined the F1 calendar, and then that was followed shortly after in 2023 with Las Vegas making its debut. Now first, let's address the obvious and get it out of the way. Yes, the pandemic helped. People were trapped indoors, looking for new obsessions, and Drive to Survive became one of them. But to say that F1 only got lucky misses the point. Luck rewards preparation, and Liberty Media came prepared. They were a media company, and they were chosen as buyers specifically. Remember, this was back in late 2016 because they had a blueprint to turn F1 into a content-first property with America as the prize. Looked at in that respect, Drive to Survive was never the end game. It was part of a much larger plan. So what followed, the calendar expansions, the celebrity engagement, the luxury positioning, all of it, was all part of a deliberate compound growth strategy, and it wouldn't have worked without the right foundations in place. And it is this foundation that I'll now evaluate in other motorsport series benchmarked against F1. So I want to propose a systematic framework to do this. And the important message in this entire series, this episode, and the whole three-part series is that you can't copy the outcome without replicating the architecture. And that's exactly why most other series fail when they try to do a DTS. And others have tried. You can go look on Amazon. You can go look various other content providers. Better yet, you can go look at the Motorsports content directory that I've put together. That'll be linked in the show notes. You can link to all these various series and loads of other content with regards to motorsport. But those series are there, and if you haven't heard of them, it's for a reason. The process for determining a series readiness for a global mass market campaign spearheaded by a Drive to Survive style show is as followed. So first, I wanted to establish an objective rubric covering all the aspects of F1 leading to Drive to Survive's success and weight those dimensions according to importance. I will link the article to this show in the show notes, and I do encourage you to go look at that. I have a lot more detail, and it's worth going into it because I won't read you the entire rubric. However, I do want to list the dimensions that I have scored, as well as the weights. So I've got media ownership and execution at 20%, a glamour-ready calendar at 15%, luxury relevant manufacturers at 15%, global reach at 10%, influencer celebrity access at 10%, hero drivers at 10%, and then technical and aesthetic identity, sponsor ecosystem, luxury fan base readiness, and visual and branding coherence, all at 5% each. From this rubric, the goal was to assign a score for each dimension across series and calculate the weighted average. And these were scored from 1 to 5. And then finally, set a target score under which series must still fill in certain gaps before being ready for broader exposure. For this analysis, I have a rubric that scores each dimension on a scale of 1 to 5, with F1 being perfect at 5 out of 5. I mean, it's the benchmark. And a cutoff selected at 4 out of 5. So why a 4 out of 5 cutoff score? The minimum viable score for a series to realistically benefit from a Drive to Survive style treatment, meaning it can attract new audiences, elevate brand value, and unlock luxury positioning without embarrassing itself or its production team, is, in my mind, a 4.0 out of 5 weighted average. Below this level, there is a risk the associated series, even well executed, will not reach escape velocity. In the best case, it will be well received by existing fans, but the infrastructure will not be there to allow for explosive growth amongst those not already watching a given racing series. Here's some more detailed thinking. At 4.0, you're saying the series scores an average of basically good to excellent across all key luxury and media readiness metrics. That's high enough for a global audience to latch onto and for sponsors and media companies to feel safe investing. Generally speaking, a score below 4.0 implies you have to fix some fundamentals first, such as the calendar being too provincial, too unattractive, or too inaccessible. And I won't name tracks that might be considered ugly, but I think we all have a list of who the usual suspects are. Not to say the racing isn't great, but look, not every track can look as nice as Monaco. So the brands aren't attractive enough, so people care more about Ferrari than Lotta. I think that's a given. The global appeal might not be there, so production costs would be justified. Also, some series may lack hero drivers or anyone with personality. I mean, all due respect to Sebastian Loeb, but how many people out of rallying know who Sebastian Loeb is, or really in the broader population generally? And again, no disrespect to him, he's a legend, but just doesn't have the name recognition of a Lewis Hamilton. And finally, there could be too much friction to even film, much less get people to watch. Now, the key point here is that even though 4.0 is the cutoff, above 3.5 implies potential. This is a maybe. If gaps in the rubric are addressed, a series could punch above its weight if paired with a strong production partner and full openness from teams. So yes, there are risks, but the potential is there. So again, I encourage you to click the link in the show notes and go to the full article on the Voce Analytics website. I've got the full breakdown of scores, but I'm just going to list in descending order how the scorecard worked out. So of course, we have F1 at 5 out of 5. We then have the WEC, the World Endurance Championship, below it at 3.6. That is followed by Formula E at 3.2. IMSA is at 2.6. IndyCar is at 2.5. And finally, WRC is all the way at the back, the World Rally Championship at 2.1. So the outcome to this is that only the WEC is a potential candidate for a major media series, but it still needs to close gaps. And this leads into a case study which we'll cover in part 3 of this series, and that's preparing the WEC for its major debut. According to the data, only one series clears the bar. Out of 5 major motorsports series evaluated against the benchmark of F1, only the WEC lands in the emerging tier with a weighted score of 3.6, putting it within striking distance of the 4.0 minimum required to justify a high investment drive to survive style media product. This means the WEC isn't ready yet, but crucially, it could be. In part 2, we'll explore the strategic compromises required to move from legacy mindset to luxury platform. Then in part 3, we'll dive into a detailed gap analysis, which is to say what the WEC is already doing well, how close it actually is to being media ready at the global scale, and how it can complete the whole puzzle. I am really looking forward to sharing that information with you. But in the meantime, I want to thank you, as always, for spending your time with me on this episode of Return on Racing. If you liked these insights and you want more of them, I'd ask that you please sign up for the Return on Racing newsletter. And you can do that directly from the front page of the Vaucher Analytics website. This newsletter will send targeted insights to you on technical happenings in the world of motorsports, business happenings in the world of motorsports, basically actionable intel straight to your inbox that you can use as quickly as possible, because all of these emails are less than 500 words. So the idea is to be efficient and help you apply that as quickly and effectively as possible to your own operations. Again, I want to thank you so much for spending your time on this very special 3-part series of Return on Racing, and I look forward to seeing you very soon for part 2.